Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am on Gerrard Street in London, in front of the house where Edmund Burke lived where he was in London. So he's best known for being a political philosopher, writer and politician. He was born in Dublin in 1729, and his father was a member of the Church of Ireland. His mother was a Catholic. His mother was from Cork. Anyway, but Edmund Burke, crucially, was brought up in the Church of Ireland, as I say, a Protestant. The Protestant minority in Ireland monopolised political power for themselves. Had he been raised as a Roman Catholic, like most people in Ireland, he would have been excluded from political rights at the time. Anyway, he went to Trinity College Dublin, the only university in Ireland, because of course very, very few people went on to third level education back then, perhaps 1% of the population, and some children didn't go to school at all until, say, the 1870s. So he was called to the bar here in England, and he practiced here a little bit, but he was better known as a journalist, and he was associate of the Pitt family, well, particularly Pitt the Younger. Now, Pitt the Younger became Prime Minister in 1783, just after the end of the American Revolution, and Pitt the Younger's father, Pitt the Elder, had been a Tory Prime Minister. So Pitt the Younger was from a Tory family, but seemed to be not belonging to the Tory party, or indeed the Whig party. People who his followers were just Pittites. In those days, political parties were completely informal. If someone was a Tory or a Whig, whoever called himself a Tory or Whig, there was no manifesto, there was no set of policies per se, there was no official leader or official membership or anything, and some members of Parliament didn't belong to any party at all. Well, plenty of them didn't belong to any party at all. Others, it's dubious whether they're a Tory or a Whig or what. So, Burke, it's difficult to say which party he was. However, the Tories were fairly unpopular in Ireland, even though Tory is originally an Irish word. In these late 1780s, it was really a question of recovering from this disastrous defeat in the American Revolution, and obviously France, Spain, and the Netherlands had fought against the United Kingdom as well. So although Pitt was Irish, although Edmund Burke was Irish, he spent almost his entire life here in Great Britain, particularly in London, elected a member of Parliament for Bristol, and once described himself as a true Englishman. So he seemed to think being Irish and being English were compatible. He could be both. And yes, it's true, he did have English ancestors, but that was several generations earlier. You'll see him memorably depicted in The Madness of King George, in that film. He's only got a cameo, but he's got a recognisable Dublin accent in that. So he did not speak the Irish language. Yeah, he only spoke English. Obviously wrote French as well. And he travelled quite extensively in France too. And anyway, he was enamoured of all things British, really, and thought that this was the best political system in the world, despite its drawbacks, the right balance of monarchy, aristocracy, and of an elected element to government. The Crown and Parliament was the way to rule. We mostly regard that as largely nonsensical these days, that it wasn't a very good or rational system. Then 1789 came the French Revolution, and he initially welcomed this, but very rapidly he changed his mind on that one, and he published his reflections on the revolution in France, saying that it was noxious to mankind. And the trouble is, it was based on abstract principles. It wasn't based on something that actually worked. It has to be practical. It can't be something simply theoretical. And that France had her traditions, had something that, despite its flaws, functioned, and it was leading to dysfunction and disaster. And so it proved. Now, I know the system in pre-revolutionary France was pretty dreadful, was very irrational. Most people lived in dreadful poverty. They lived in quite severe poverty here too in many cases, but it was more or less an absolute monarchy. So he thought, no, they should have actually stuck with what they had, and it'll all get out of hand. This reform process will go too far, and then you will have an anarchy, and it will just lead to dystopia. And it sort of did with the mass guillotinings and so on, and mass drownings, deliberate drownings in rivers of political suspects. Now, admittedly, this country here, people were hanged for grand larceny, stealing something worth more than 12 pence. Admittedly, 12 pence back then was a considerable sum, was half a day's wage for a skilled craftsman such as a carpenter or a blacksmith or something like that. But nevertheless, it was quite shocking to think people in this country, here in the United Kingdom, were executed for stealing food at that time. So then the war against France broke out in 1793. Revolutionary France declared war on the United Kingdom. There were many émigrés, French aristocrats, and members of the royal family who'd fled to this country, settled here, and Burke thought that the French Revolution was dreadful and must be fought to the finish. So perhaps becoming increasingly small c conservative as he got older, Obviously, the Conservative Party as such didn't exist until at least 1828. Better known as a writer, raconteur, wit, and so on. But obviously, since his death, different parties, the Whigs and the Tories, both tried to claim him. Liberals and Conservatives in the late 19th century tried to claim him. I don't think the Labour Party could say that he was one of theirs. So that's Burke, really, in a nutshell. Married, had children, but not an easy man to know, because he periodically deliberately burnt his papers. In some senses, a very private man, despite being a public figure. Didn't want people to know too much about his correspondence. And how things have changed here, that you can see this is now Chinatown. Not many Irish people around here on Gerrard Street, London, where the street signs are written in Chinese as well as in English. That's enough on Edmund Burke.